This is the Freud's Angels podcast.
I'm Vanessa, your intuitive counselor.
And I'm Grace, your spiritual guide. Our goal is to help you learn to blend your spiritual connection
And mental consciousness to give you clarity
and understanding to lead a life
of your choosing. Welcome.
We're glad you're here. Hi, angels. Hi, friends. Hi, people of the world. How are you? We're so back. I'm so glad. I'm so grateful Vanessa had a chance to go on vacation. It's wonderful she went, but I can tell you, I'm glad she's back from vacation.
Me too. As much as I love vacations, this one was a wild one. Not in terms of the things that I was doing, but all the life part that I learned about being. And I was like, wow, okay. Like this was less the vacation that I took before my surgery was vacation. I detached from everything. I had a good time. I was not working. I was prepared, and I prepared everything ahead of time. And then like with the surgery and all the trauma of that, like I still was carrying that. And so I had to work, right? Like during this time period where I would normally barely work if I was going to do it at all. And it just threw me off. It threw me off big time because I think I just really wanted to be in the energy of letting go and wanted to be in the energy of, oh my God, I'm on vacation. And I couldn't do it because I couldn't do it. Like there was too many other things that I had to do. So it was a very big learning lesson for me of, what I can and cannot do and how to prepare better for it. And I'm glad to be back because it feels very like I felt very untethered in a bad way. And so I'm glad to be back here in my tethered space, my carefully curated tethered space. So it does not feel like prison and, and co-creating and sitting down and feeling normal. It feels great.
Yeah, I'm glad you're back. Also glad you took vacation, but it's like that old adage, I need vacation from my vacation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wasn't relaxing or refreshing at all.
Like I did a lot of things. Like it was beautiful, but man, I was tired. I fell asleep the day after we got back at like 8 p.m.
It's like, all the driving and the stuff and yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, friends, we are going to talk to something kind of interesting today. I think something that's kind of come up. Oh, and this is an asterisk to the reading that we did this week. So if you didn't listen to it, go back to it. So Vanessa's card was the Miracles card from the Mermaids. And it was not ironic that today I was watching my talk I gave about miracles. We did an episode of the podcast about miracles. Mm-hmm. And I also did a talk with a meditation at the end to invite in more miracles of your life. And so those of you who would like that, please let us know. I will happy to post a link to it and to get that talk and that video because it's about an hour long, but I talk about our definitions of miracles, what they mean, how we can sometimes invite them in and how we reject them because of our belief systems. And then I go into a meditation opening us up to share and invite in more miracles in our life. That's what I wanted to say in the reading, but I forgot because my brain, I love it, but it has very short span of memory.
Well, we trust the universe needed it to be at the beginning of this podcast. Yes. For whatever reason. Not privy to that information just yet.
But I think we're going to talk about a topic that is really, I think, connected to a lot of people and what a lot of people struggle with because of the way society sees it. And so I'm super excited about it because I have thoughts and Spirit has thoughts and I'd love to share them. And Vanessa, please share with us, what are we going to be chatting about today?
Well, I had to have you refresh my memory on it because I remember it with like in our pregame, we were talking about, I'm like, oh my God, I was so inspired. And then it was gone. And boy, does that not tell the story of what we are here to talk about. About how it is to be inspired and to follow paths and to do things and be a starter. Like I had written down after you refresh my memory, being a serial starter. And I remember there's somebody that I follow. I kind of follow a little bit loosely, but one of the ways that she gets introduced is as a serial entrepreneur. And to me, that's like that knowledge of being like, man, I've done this multiple times in multiple different ways. Um, and to me, like, I had to learn that that was a good thing because I was always shamed for starting new things and not finishing and not following through, and like all of those messages that we get about consistency and all of that kind of stuff, and how it stunts our growth big time.
Yeah.
You know, to the point that when I sit down with people in the counseling space and I ask them to do something that they like to do, they like won't do it because they're like, what's the point? Or what
Yeah.
if I don't finish? Or what if I don't like it? Or what if, and it's like, okay, but you want to do it. Let's follow it to some point, you know, because it's never a waste of time. But it's like such a deprogramming to get to that point. Um, and I believe we were talking too about how many times we hear the story, speaking of miracles, hear the story of people who like start this random side project that is a passion project. Like, right, we love the word passion project.
Yes.
What is a passion project? I love it so much I have to do it. And I don't care. My outcome gone. Like, my outcome is that I get to do it. And I don't really care about the capacity of which it has to do something maybe financial or even for other people. Like, sometimes a passion project is for your literally just for yourself. But how many times do we watch it take off and then go help other people or then become fruitful? And it's like, because the energy of it was love and the energy of it was passion.
Yep.
And man, when you put those two concepts together, you're like, oh, well, if you don't ever do that, if you don't ever let yourself be a serial starter, like the possibility of that happening is zero, right? Like, legitimately, like, you if you don't let yourself, it's not going to happen. And so I feel like it's important to give permission, and I feel like that's what I do is like I give people permission, like, start it and quit it, and as many times as you need to start a new thing, take away that messaging of consistency being forcing yourself to do something you're no longer aligned with. So we'll see where it goes, but I feel like that
Yeah.
was, the inspiration for me is just like, my ADHD brain has been so shamed over the years, but now that I work with it, I'm like, oh my god, my life is great. Like, it's fun. My life is fun because I let myself be who I am, who is a serial starter. It's good.
Yeah.
It's fine. There's no waste whatsoever.
Yep. Yep. 1000%. So when I think about people who do that, I think about, the old back in our day.
I'm gonna our day before. Oh my god, I can't tell you about the things I talked about this week. Or I will tell you about the things I talked about that were back in my day.
Yeah. But it was, I see them as you see them as like the surfer dudes who are like traveling in a van across the country and doing like 100 different things, and they're not really successful. And that's the image that has been portrayed most of our life, is that, they're kind of not worth much and they're not consistent, and they're like a kind of a hippie type person. And it's like,
But they're happy.
yeah, like, I mean, it just, I don't know. I don't know. It's that societal image of people who do that are has been used to shame people so much for doing
Mhm.
that I think that it's unfair. It is unfair.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the reason, so we're not just one-dimensional humans. When you think, if I have a job, I do my job, and I have one hobby and that's it. That is a really shitty life, okay? It's not
Not
bad if
happy.
that works for you, I'm not saying. But for some of us, oh my god, could you imagine the boredom? Could you imagine the
No, I don't
lack
even
of
want. I can't even try
inspiration?
that jacket on. I can't even try it on.
Like, it's the lack of inspiration. See, because here's the thing. We are multifaceted humans. We have many interests due to either our background, our family, our friends, what interests us. We have many different interests. And why would it be that our projects, the things we want to work on, the things we may want to try are going to be any different? And if we don't try them, then we don't know if they work for us. We don't know. We've had the inspiration to try it out. I think it was a lot like this podcast. We had inspiration to try it out
Yeah.
and see if it was something we could do or wanted to do. And it ended up being one of those things. But if we would have started this and both of us were like, yeah, not feeling it, not inspired here, we would have been like, okay, we're done.
Yeah.
It's giving that sense of like, I think now in the motivational spaces, they're like, if you don't try, you'll never know if it works. And you'll be thinking, what if it's the dissipating card in the chakra wisdom oracle cards that I always used to get? Like the idea of I've had these ideas and I talk about the ideas all the time, but I never try or start it because of whatever reason I'm afraid to, or, because I'm afraid to quit if I don't like it. It's why sometimes people carry jobs or businesses on for so long because they're afraid to be quitting, or they're afraid to be looked at as flaky or whatever judgment you want to insert judgment here, right? And if we don't try something, we're never going to know. We're never going to know if we enjoy it, if it sparks something. It could be that it was a passion for a moment because you had the inspiration, and then you're like, okay, I think I'm complete with it, and then you move on. It creates the most dynamic and interesting people that I've ever met, the people that do that.
100%.
Because they have so much information, because they went information gathering for their passion, for the inspiration, that if somebody comes to them, it's like, yeah, I'm thinking about creating this or doing this, they can say, oh, let me tell you what I've learned. And give them the information. It's there's a purpose in those people because they become information gatherers for the rest of the world. There's a purpose in it. And what we don't realize is that's how we keep ourselves connected to our hearts, to our life. That isn't I was born to work at a fucking job and not enjoy my life in the way that I see fit. And to be honest with you, the judgment came from the boomer generation, where all they did, that was what they did. Their goals were to work at a job that gave you a pension so you could retire.
Well, right, because they came from the generation
Right.
of it didn't really matter how hard you worked, the government could fuck up and then you have nothing. And
Right.
so
And the
it's
depression.
like it created this whole other, well, this is how we do it then.
Yes.
Yikes.
Which is, it's not no shade on them, because that was the generation they grew up in. But we have to understand is that when people say that or think of that about us, I feel we have to take a step back and we have to say, what perspective are they seeing us in? And how are they seeing it? Because if they did that in their lifetime, it was risky, because they wouldn't have money for
100%.
life. And so it's just having that
mind women.
understanding. Huh?
Like, never mind if you were a woman.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You weren't
Forget
doing
it.
any of this shit.
I mean, considering it was like what the 40s or the 50s before we could actually own a bank account by ourselves without our husbands. Are you fucking kidding me? Don't even get me on
1972?
that word. Yeah.
1972.
Oh my
72.
God. Really?
Something like that. Yes. Or buying a house in 1972.
Yeah.
Like, 1972 was like one of those moments where it was like, what? Right? Like it was still illegal for, it was still legal for landlords in 1984, 88, one of those two, to deny you because you were a single mom. Like, it's ridiculous, the things that are actually in there. But yeah, like it goes into like that discussion of where did this come from, right? Like, where did my value system come from? And that's, when I sit down with people, this is what we talk about, right? Like, so that's fine that you have that programming, but we have to know where that programming came from and whose value system it was and why that value system was there, right? Because we want to understand it. You can still hold on to it if you decide after we've done all this work that it still works for you 100%. Like, that's totally fine. But what we're actually trying to do is discover why I'm doing this if I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Because if I have friction in my life or I have unhappiness in my life, I'm doing things I don't want to do. And I mean, I think we can all agree that most of what we are struggling with is a capitalist, consumerist, industrial problem, value system that we're all running from, right? Because I mean, time is our most valuable commodity, and people are like, "Oh my god, I don't have time to do that. Like, why would I waste my time if it's not fruitful?" Like, but we'll sit in front of the TV because we see that as valuable because we're like, "Oh my god, I'm deprogramming or not I'm decompressing." But we're watching things that are making our brains work. We're not decompressing whatsoever.
Yeah.
We're just shifting focus. Why not shift our focus to something that makes us feel really good and makes us feel creative? Because we don't understand. We've been taught about energy expenditure and making sure that it gives you an immediate return. We
Yeah.
won't do it,
Yeah.
and it's like, wow, when you really dig into those value systems, we find a lot of that commonality of people are afraid to do something because they don't understand the energy exchange of it other than some of these like what is success, monetary things. And yeah, like it's I mean it's rampant with most of the people that I sit down with. We have to go through this value system and be like, or like what else, and we try to find small places in their lives where they do things like that. Like, okay, so when you go and you hang out with your friends, where is your value system at that point, right? Because you're not, the return on investment isn't financial then, but you'll do it,
Yeah.
right? So what is it that you're getting there? Because we're trying to make a link in between more things in your life touching you that way,
Yeah.
right? And creativity is the first thing to go, it feels like.
Yep.
A lot of people won't do creative things because they don't feel like unless they're good at it, they won't be successful. And if they're not successful, then it'll be a waste of their time. So it's like wild because, like you said, it gets passed down from so many generations. And we also live in a time right now where there's way more to even consider
Yeah.
in terms of this, right?
We've
So there was nobody that could teach us about what it's like to have access at
yeah.
our fingertips to how to do something. I can
Yeah.
YouTube anything and learn
Yeah.
how to do it. My parents couldn't teach me that because there was no friggin' YouTube for them to be like, listen, here's how like if you want to do such and such projects, YouTube it, right? Like
Yeah.
and like I can teach my kid. They couldn't do that. It was like you better pay a professional to do it because we don't know how like if you fuck up your toilet, you're screwed, right? Like whereas, and I use that analogy because I fixed my friend's toilet when when I was up there, and it was like like I had access to my fingertips, right? Like of that information.
Yeah.
So I wasn't afraid to do it because I felt like there's going to be something out there that helps me do it.
Yeah.
So that's something we have that our grandparents didn't have, our
Exactly.
parents didn't have, our great grandparents didn't have. So they didn't have the ability to pass down that permission, if
Yeah.
you will, to
Yeah.
say, like, not a waste of your time. They have only their value system to pass down. And it's
Yeah.
up to us to take what we like from that value system and change it to what we want and what is actually available to us, what's accessible, what the world is like today. And go from there. Easier said than done, obviously, because I think, there are some parameters. I will give people like the benefit of the doubt sometimes when it's like, if you want to do oil painting, it's expensive to
Yeah.
start out, so I get it. But then we have to change our ideas and our beliefs and say, well, can I use kids paint that costs $4
Yeah.
just to start painting, right? Like just so that I can get myself in my creative process. Can I suspend the expectation of perfection or whatever that is so that I can get myself into the creative process and see that as valuable?
Yeah.
It's a lot. I know that everything that I just said is a lot. It's like I try to cram in what I do with people in like a year of
10 seconds.
therapy in like 10 sentences.
I know. It is a process though. And I think too is that it's there's so much in this world we have to focus on and we have to look and know how to do. And there's so much complexity in this world. Whereas, I mean, I could fix a car from the 70s and the 80s. You know what I mean? Like I could fix cars because they were simple. Now shit's not simple. Like things are not simple. The way they build houses is not simple. The way the things in your houses are not simple. Like, stoves, like they used to be just really basic. Now they're not basic. Now there's a whole bunch of other stuff. So it's, it would be hard for one human to retain all of that knowledge and how to do it and how to survive because I think we were taught to do things like that on whim or just by trying and seeing,
Mhm.
and that's because that's all our parents knew how to do. They didn't
Mhm.
have, I mean, they maybe had manuals, but that was as far as they had. It was all about
Mhm.
passing knowledge down.
Mhm.
And the world is ever changing, and if we stayed there and didn't utilize this resources, we'd all be like checking out because we'd be like, we don't know how to live.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is like, if you talk about my mother refuses to learn how to use computers. She can't do Skype, or she doesn't have a smartphone. She still has a flip phone because she refuses to learn it. And I'm like, you're missing out on FaceTiming with your kids, or
Mhm.
or your grandchildren, or connecting in a way. But I think she doesn't have the brain that can cope with it, which is fine. It's her choice. But
But it's choice, right? Like,
yeah,
and that's what I think when we come up against of when we're denying ourselves, opportunities. We're very trained to believe in the limitation versus the, like, even just mental exploration.
yeah,
What would it be like? Because there's all this ownership and all this, other stuff that comes in. Because it's funny when you were talking about the surfer, persona. I was thinking about the the what's his name? Chris Farley skit of living in a van down by the river, and,
oh
like, how we laugh now because, like, there's a lot of people that see that as success and freedom now, right? Like, of, like, just get in your RV, right? Like, it's not a van down by the river, but it's an RV down by the river, an expensive RV, because it's freedom, and it's not,
yeah,
it's like changing the dynamic of what is successful. Wow, like, it's so internal, right? Because I can remember being a child and hearing those messages about those people. They're a waste. They're not adding anything to society. Like, they're not contributing to society, right? And so then what was my value system? What was the message that I got? Don't do anything unless you contribute to society. What the fuck?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
put society above yourself is the messaging that we all got all the time. So it's not shocking that that's the value system that we're operating from until we go in and we change it and go, who's more important? Me. If that
yep.
dude running around in a van surfing is happier than me, then I should be jealous, if anything, right? Like, man,
100%.
that guy is gonna lay on his deathbed and be like, my life was awesome. I did everything I wanted to do. I was detached from anything that anybody else said I should do. Great life. And I'm going to lay on my deathbed going, I didn't get to do anything because I was working all the time and I was like, I'm not trying to be that person. That to me
Yeah,
is wildly unsuccessful now because I've allowed myself to think of what is success? Is success enjoying my life, or is success being a productive member of society, doing things for other people, making money, having big houses, having fancy cars at my expense?
yeah.
I just can't subscribe to it now. Like, you can't go back. Once you, like, get the taste of it, you're like, nope, no. And then you want to free everybody else. You want to be the person who goes to the shelter and opens all the cages. Let's
Yeah.
go to the farm. I got one over here. You'll run free.
Yes. 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 It is hard. And also, if you think also about our personal limitations we put on ourselves.
Yeah.
For example, art used to be like creating art of any kind for me used to be very difficult because I had two belief systems that were stopping me. One, I couldn't do it very well. And two, like there used to be a conversation, and I hate how we remember these types of conversations and not others.
Yeah.
But Like, I remember my father telling me, you're not a creative person. And it was just like, that has stuck with me my whole life, as I'm meant to be the logic 9 to 5 worker and not meant to be a person who creates and who is creative. And it's taken me, oh, I don't know, another 30 something years to unpick that and to begin to. I'm not even done. I'm just starting to unpick that. Like,
Yeah.
it's the impact in our belief systems about, like, that impact us doing those things, of on a whim starting 900 projects. And I feel that some people can't because it's too much and it's overwhelming and you get yourself a little crazy. It's an ADHD thing. I get it.
Mhm.
I get that part of it. But I also get that at some point in your life, whether you have ADHD or not, you were inspired to do it and it brought you joy or it brought you the dopamine that you needed in that moment. And that's all that mattered. Whether you finished the project or not, it didn't really matter. It's mattered is in that moment, that's what you needed in order to progress you to the next inspiration or the next step. It's like everything in life. So much of my own business, I mean, if you want to talk about logic left brain business stuff, so much of my own stuff is now just being inspired due to all the things that have happened and all the things that I've started and stopped and all the knowledge that I've gained because I've researched the crap out of it but never did anything with it. I mean, us trying this passion project out and doing it and succeeding at it and going, well, maybe I can succeed at things. Maybe there is
Yeah.
success at things. And in what is success? What expectation am I putting on this project? And am I realistic in just allowing the understanding of what it's bringing me, or do I expect it to make me $100,000 in 2 years? Right? What is the expectation, the pressure that I'm not only putting on the project but myself?
Yeah.
And am I using that to set myself up to fail because that project was never destined to bring me money? It was destined to bring me the inspiration in other places that would bring in more revenue, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so we think one note. Everything we do needs to bring money or bring whatever. And that's how the hustle culture has taught us, right? You pick one thing and you go hard at it. Marketing instructors, you have to pick your niche. If you don't pick your
Yeah.
niche, you're, and I get it. We do need to kind of understand who we're talking to, but when you boil it down to an age group, a gender, and whatever, you're missing out on the inspiration of creating stuff for others. And maybe it's a young teenage male that comes in and is like, well, actually, I feel this, and you're like, oh, that inspires me to create something different. When
Yeah.
we limit ourselves, sometimes it's important to have definition and focus. But when we're limiting ourselves in all situations because we have to focus on one thing, we limit the inspiration. I mean, I was just talking to Vanessa today in our pregame about an inspiration I had, and I had no plan in being inspired to do something, but went in and I have purchased a URL today and like done things. I'm like, why am I doing this? I don't know, but I'm doing it
It's taking me somewhere.
because I felt inspired. I have no expectation. I'm not going to sit here and figure it out and do the DBA and my LLC. I'm not doing all that because it isn't to that point yet, but I'm just like, inspiration will come as far as what it's embodying and what it's being and what facet of me shows up in that space. And so that doesn't mean it needs to happen tomorrow, but
Mhm.
because of the way that we've been taught, either by Instagram or by the society or our family or our own belief systems, like, in the past, I would have had this idea and spent a week trying to flush it out and then felt really disappointed and felt like I failed because I couldn't gather the inspiration to see it through
Yeah.
rather than letting it come to me as it needed to. And
Yeah.
different things happen to create that inspiration. And I need to let the other different things happen, or the other projects or the other inspirations that I look at and do to inspire me to complete whatever it is that is. So we don't understand, I think sometimes, is that the process is when we have an idea, we think we have to take everything we know now or gather that information and create it. It's
Mhm.
not about us just creating. When
Mhm.
we're co-creating with the universe, spirit, whomever you have faith in, then that's how that takes the passion project and takes it to a different level.
Mhm.
Because Vanessa and I are both connected to universal energy, to going with what feels right in the moment, using those signals from our intuition, from spirit, from the universe, we've allowed this process. We've tried and stopped and we've done things and we decided we don't want to do them because it didn't feel good. And we've done that here, but there is a solid foundation of what we're pulling from. We're not willing to sign on to because we created it and we have to do it and this is the way we have to do it. We make those decisions, but that's why it's been so successful. That's why
Yeah.
it's 5 years in, right?
Mhm.
Because we haven't put it in a box and said it can only be this.
Yeah. Well, because our focus has been correct, right? Like if we're gonna either do the right or the wrong thing, even though that's always a spectrum, it's been correct. Like we're just like, well, but our purpose for doing it was to put information out into the world. Then it morphed. We let it morph. It's something that helps us tremendously in our own lives. So
Yes.
why would we stop doing it, right? Like we've allowed the idea of success even to shift going forward because I mean obviously we started it in the pandemic times. That was a very different reason to be giving information than now, right? Like we were, people were trapped in their houses and feeling some type of way, but they're not anymore. But we're still here like no, it feels good to be able to give more information and to process things out loud and to have those focuses. And I feel like even when you talk about like niche stuff, it's like the value in it to me is the value of like if I'm like, hey, I need a person, right? Like so for instance, I was thinking about this. I was like, if I need a person to teach me how to speak, then I need to know who's a good speaker, right? So they're going to have to put that out there that they're a good speaker. And I'm also going to want somebody who's like me, right? So I can't, it can't be somebody who's not like me, right? So when I look at on their end, what do they have to do in order to be visible as that person, right? That's what they have to do. They don't have to look for me because I'm 46
Yeah.
and a woman. They have to look for me as I want to touch the people who are outside of the norm, who aren't going to talk in a stuffy type of like, presenting just information, is going to want to be a little bit more expressive and maybe have audience participation, right? So that's the package that they offer, right? Like, so I see the value, but I think a lot of just business coaches are regurgitating specific, like the same information. And so it loses its value.
Right.
And this is where we get all confused, right? And I think that that's just the bigger picture of all of it, is that we're all confused about the messages that started small and became big, right? Like be intentional with your life, 100%. But let your intention shift is the part that got missed, right? Because again, like we look at our generations and that was very frivolous. You couldn't do that shit in the 40s where you're just like, you know what I'm going to do now? This. Like I get it. You couldn't do that. There wasn't but we're in that place now so we can learn how to shift like what loyalty means, right? When it comes to what we're doing for other people and what we're doing at jobs and how that works. Yeah, like we're no longer doing it as a self-sacrifice thing, but we might do it when we join a startup that we actually believe in. You're going to get a different loyalty, or like when I worked for a nonprofit, you got a different loyalty from me because I believed in your mission,
Right.
not because I felt obligated to be loyal because that's what you're supposed to do, and being somewhere for 10 years is credible. No, I'll be here for 10 years if I love it here, if it feels good for me, because this is the time that we live in where we get that choice, so we're going to exercise that choice. But when you were talking about art too, I was thinking about that value system and how like I do not like that we still have like a grade that people get in art. Like I it bothers me that art as an education isn't about a creative process, that it becomes part of education in terms of like pass fail. Either you're good at it or you're not,
Yeah.
because that I think has stunted more people than anything. Because when you were saying like, "Oh, I'm not good at it," I was thinking about, man, I have been in some places, and I bet everybody's been in some places where you look at something and you go, "That is a bunch of paint thrown at a thing. Like it's not even a thing." And people are like, "Oh my god, the expressiveness." And I'm like, "I see no expressiveness. I see that somebody could have done that in 10 minutes and now it costs $10,000." Like I don't get it. I don't feel the feels from it. But I'm happy for that person because they fucking did it. You know what I mean? Like, hey, that was, and they, whatever energy they put into it clearly was coming back out because it was being valued at whatever. So like the whole evaluation part of it is where I think we continue to go wrong, is because it's not about the feeling, it's always about the outcome, and whether or not, when we compare it against that value system of success, whether or not it's worth doing. And same with all, I had to learn, like, y'all, I tell people this all the time, and this is why I have some people with ADHD that come to me specifically for this reason. I'm so happy because I have learned how to create my life around how my brain works. I've had to, because I suffered so much trying to do what everybody else told me to do. And I felt the suffering so deeply that I couldn't help myself. I couldn't put myself in that misery where I see a lot of people in. So I had to learn to shift a lot of perspectives around that. It was more than just allow yourself to start and stop. I had to shift my perspective on my lack mindset, that buying things for projects and then abandoning the project is fine because you'll make more money and it will be okay. Like, who would think that, right? Like, I'm focused on the art and I'm focused on the not having comparison, but I had all these other lack mentality things that went along with it. And I hear that so much. I can't afford to do that. Like,
Yeah.
okay, let's figure it out of how to get that mindset shifted too, because I see that that was ingrained in you. So it's not simple. And I think that that's
Yeah.
why it's so hard for people to get into this space, is because it gets oversimplified. Just try it. Just start. It's okay. Just start. Like, people are like, I can't just start because I'm sitting over here with my, generational this, and I've got my, financial this, and like, you know what I mean? Like, I have to dig into why I won't start
Yeah.
before I can be comfortable starting, before I can be comfortable quitting if I decide I don't want to do it.
Oh
So
yeah.
I don't want to oversimplify it for sure,
No.
and I feel like when I was talking before, I was like, I might have been oversimplifying it when when I'm like, oh, just do it. I'll give you permission. It's so much more than that. And like I was saying before, like trying to cram in what all the things that happen over the process when I'm doing this with somebody in the counseling space in one podcast is a lot, because it's so many different things that go into it.
Yeah.
And every person has their own individual reasons for
Yeah.
resistance,
Yeah.
that it makes it really hard to speak to all of them. So we're here giving our perspectives, and we're giving our, like our realities, in hopes that it helps some people who have similar ones, but it also helps people get curious about, well, all right, what's my special thing then?
Yeah. And I so agree, because as you were talking, I was thinking about my own stuff and how my brain has that mentality of that generation of don't do it, because it's like it's frivolous. It's not, you have to like watch every penny, and at the same time it'll go, well, yeah, but if you don't have the right equipment, you can't do it.
Yeah.
If you don't have the right stuff, if you don't, if and it goes on this, process of like, well, I got to have this and I got to have that and I got to know this. And by the time I get to the thing, I'm so just done with it because I'm tired of processing what I needed to do to get to it, that it's like, whatever. And it's my brain's way of shutting it down, of not doing it. And then there's a guilt factor. So you're right. There's process, there's belief systems, there's learned belief systems. I mean, hold on, my cat is being a little extra. I don't want to step on the space bar and be like, yeah, shut us down.
Yeah.
So it's, it's like it's also, witnessing my grandparents and the money situation, and then,
Mhm.
then you get into deservability and exploring when you don't know what lights you up and what that means or what that feels like, what the passions feel like. And, if you haven't experienced things that give you those feelings, it's like, well, what is it? What am I passionate about? What am I curious about? Can I go do that? There's so many questions, I think, when we step into the spaces that are like, oh, it feels like overwhelming, a little daunting.
Yeah.
And it's baby steps, right? It's being curious.
Yeah.
It's taking the inspiration as it comes. Like today, like just
Mhm.
I was inspired to buy a URL
Mhm.
and to take an Instagram handles that was in alignment. I'm not doing anything with it. Nothing will happen. I spent $20.
Yep.
Like,
Which I would have spent on who knows what else anyway, but all good. It's all good.
yeah, it'll all lead to something or it'll lead to nothing. But I was inspired, and
Well,
so I
it'll
took
always lead to
inspiration.
something, right? And that's the thing about it, right? Like, is there's no such thing as nothing, nothing. There's no such thing as nothing. It will lead to you saying, I don't want to do that. If that's all, and that is not nothing. That's a big thing. That's actually a really big thing of
Yeah.
when you follow something that you think you wanted and then you don't want it anymore. There's so much value there. I always tell people, like, it helps me put things in boxes and seal them up for now, like, "Oh my god, I've been thinking about it and thinking about it. It's driving me crazy." And then I go do it and I'm like, "I don't even want this. Oh, thank god I can just put it in the box. Now I don't have
Yeah.
to think about it like, maybe never again, or certainly not like I had been thinking about it."
Mhm.
It's giving me some mental space to be like, "Okay, I fucking tried it." And now it's like, it makes me wanna try everything. Yeah, again, like the ADHD brain. How many boxes can we find, and how
Yeah.
many things can we put in boxes so that we can have less things to want,
Needing a
right?
mental
Yeah,
storage unit.
yeah, exactly. I want less things to want, which is impossible because
Yeah.
I know myself. It's like you are always gonna find things. You're a curious person by nature. You're always gonna wanna know if you can do the thing because it's cool. Anything that's cool, you wanna try to do it at least once. But now that's the self-talk, right? Like of being able to say there's value in doing things once also.
Yep.
And if I
Mhm.
buy equipment for something, and this again, like the value system of being like, if I buy some things and I do some things and I decide I don't want them anymore, I will give them away or I will sell them or I will whatever because I believe that I am abundant as fuck and I will figure that whole thing out. It will be fine
Yeah.
because I will have checked off a box in my life and that is worth all the money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a lot though. I mean, it's a big jump for some people who are struggling. I know I've been in struggle where I, begging the hockey rink to just put me on a payment plan. I paid that rink monthly for like 8 years. They just add to the tab, just let me know if I have to pay more every month. Every month I was on a monthly plan because I played in 2 leagues and I didn't want to stop playing and I couldn't come up with all the money all at the same time ever. And so I just figured that whole thing out. But I figured that whole thing out because it was so important to me to
Yeah.
be able to do that, And so there's possibility when we let ourselves shift perspective.
Yeah. And give ourselves permission
Yeah.
without expectation, which is sometimes the hardest one.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So deep in there. But, I think about way back. I love to do it. Like, I don't know, it must be a past life thing or something, but I always go back to like when there was like deep tribal times. And it was like, man, those people were just like you had your thing that was natural for you and it was valued and you valued it. And then if you didn't want to do other things, you didn't do other things. Just thinking of how like less complicated it was in some ways and being like, yeah, we could stand to use some of that today,
Mhm.
just like simplification of, hey, everybody has a thing and then they try other things or they talk about other things and it's okay.
Yep. For sure.
It's okay.
I hope, friends, we have inspired you to be inspired, like to just be inspired to go do things that you're curious about, that you're unsure of, that you're like, "Ooh, that really that looks like something that would be a lot of fun," or or "Oh my gosh, I don't know that I'd ever thought to try to paint and or to write a book or to sing or whatever it is." Or maybe it's, what would it look like to create a business to do this?
Mhm.
Baking or, whatever you think that is, and try it out.
Yeah.
See what happens. And yeah, and if all the conversations in your heads comes up as to why you can't or shouldn't, or the reasons or the fears, we're here to help you sort that out.
Yeah, 100%. I think that that's one of the most valuable things for the clients that I help is that they know that they have a space where they can come in and there's no judgment and there's no like, why did you stop? And there's no, you know what I mean? It really is like more like, well, why did you stop? It's okay that you stopped, but let's talk about you and what that message has been to you. I think that there really is like a tons of value in having a safe space to be able to process it too, because a lot of times people won't do things because they don't have enough knowledge of even what questions to ask themselves when they're starting a thing. Like, okay, today I'm going to start. I don't know what question to ask myself about why I'm not starting in order to even get to movement, right? Like, and so sometimes it is really helpful to be able to sit down with somebody who can ask you a question that you have to answer. And then you're like, oh shit, there it is. That's
Yeah,
the thing. Okay. All right. We'll work on that.
yeah, totally, totally. Yeah. I'd love to hear how you're inspired today, friends. Put a comment on the Facebook post or the Instagram post or even on the Podomatic episode. I would love to hear how you're inspired and the inspiration and where it's taken you. And yeah, and we'd love to support you and just kind of give you the cheerleading that you may need to keep going and just whatever it is. But we're here to help in that way, in the way that we do best. We cheerlead the best. It's no coincidence that we met that way.
That's
Um,
right.
yeah. So we love you. We hope you have a good week. It is the season of Halloween and the Day of the Dead and all of the great holidays. So, it's a great time to feel inspired intuitively because we are so close to our intuition right now and it's very heightened. I can tell. I felt it.
For sure.
But yeah, again, if you would like to receive or watch or receive the link to your to the miracles talk, let me know. Happy to share that with you. Just DM us, send me a message, find me, whatever. You know how to get there. We love you and we hope you have a good week.
Yay. Love you. Thanks for listening.
We hope we gave you something to support your journey.
Check out our Facebook or Instagram page to connect with us.
Have a great week.